Okay, we're going to start by creating what's called a non-linear movie. So that's basically using buttons to navigate your way around the movie. So the first part, I'm going to introduce you to some new panels that we're going to use. So I'm just going to go back to the first scene. So we start off in the first scene here. So the two panels that we're going to use are the ActionScript panel, new ones. That's where we're going to put the ActionScript, the code that makes it interactive, and then we're going to use the Code Snippets panel to use pre-written set blocks of code. We're also going to use the Scene panel. We're going to create 3 scenes and then link between them. So the first thing to do is create a new movie. So File and New. Make sure it's ActionScript 3 here, third from the top. We'll keep the default stage size and the default frame rate. So double click on ActionScript 3 and that will create the new empty movie. So I'm just going to close these windows, these panels for a minute. So we've got our empty stage. We'll maximize the view by double clicking on the hand here, and then we'll open up those new panels. So if you go to Window and Actions, or you can press F9 and that will open up the Actions panel where the script's going to go. The top right hand corner of that, we have this symbol here, the two HTML brackets. If you click on there, that opens up the Code Snippets panel, and then finally we want the Scenes panel as well. So for that, if you go to Window and down to Scene, and that's Scene panel. So you see Scene 1 there. So the first thing to do before we create any of the interactivity is to create the assets. Now the assets are going to be stored in the library here. There's only one visual asset that we're going to use here, which is the button itself. So the first thing to do is to make the button. So if we, again, don't worry about the design, we'll just create a simple placeholder button. So if you click on the rectangle tool here, and you can drag out a shape. If we then click on the layer to select it, if you press F8 on the keyboard, that will open up the Convert to Symbol dialog, and we'll just call it button. Make sure the registration point is in the center. Now the important bit where it says type here, if you click on the drop down and make sure you select button. Alright, and then we can OK that, and that's fine, that's all we need for the moment. We can keep that one on the stage because we need one on this part of the scene. Again, don't worry about layout and things like that at the moment. The main thing is to get the sort of functionality working, and then you can concentrate on making the assets and designing it. So you'll see in the library here we have the button. Now we can use that as many times as we want. We can drag it from the library onto the stage to create as many what are called instances of that button as possible as we need. Okay, so I'm just going to show you my pre-made example here. So if I click back on this tab here, so very simply I've just named the scene. It's Scene 1. We have our button here. We've got 2 layers. We've got the Actions layer. We've got the layer with the assets on, so the Scene 1 text and the button itself. If I click on see the Actions layer here, there's a small A on the empty frame there. That means that there's ActionScript on that frame. If I click on that frame and then go to the Actions panel, you'll see it shows us the script that is attached to that frame. So the script for Scene 1 there's 2 sections of script. The first is to stop the timeline, the needle on the timeline at that first frame. If we don't do that, however many scenes we created, it'll just whiz through and play through those scenes on a loop and not stop. So the first thing is to stop the needle. So you see this is the stop action here, stop of this frame. The good thing with Code Snippets as well is it adds comments. So the comments tell you exactly what that piece of script does. So it's saying here the flash timeline will stop pause at the frame where you insert this code. Can also be used to stop pause the timeline of movie clips. So you can also use this inside movie clips. So that's the first piece of code. Second piece of code is basically attached. It deals with the button. Now I'll just explain this. So again, well, I'll read the comments first of all. So it's saying click to go to next scene and play. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to, it's useful to have the pre-written code, but it's also useful to have some idea of how the code is constructed. So clicking on the specified symbol, so specified symbol is this, that's the name of the button. So we'll come to that in a sec. That's the name of the button. the add event listener is basically something that listens for a mouse click. So it listens for a mouse event, which is a click, and when it hears that click, it executes this function. This is the function name here. Alright, it's just a default function name that you can give a function whatever name you want. Alright, so that's in the brackets there, or parentheses, whatever you want to call it. And then we've got a semicolon, which is like a kind of end of a sentence really. So when you see a semicolon, that means that that's the end of that section of code. The next section of code is the function itself, so that's executed when we click on the button. Yeah. Again, it tells us it's a function here. Then we've got the name of the function again, which is the same as the name here. And it's telling us that the event that it's responding to is a mouse event. We're not passing any values through the function, so it says void here. And then this is the actual action that's executed. Alright, so when you click on the button, this is what happens. So when you click on the button, which is on the main timeline here, it sends it to the next scene. Okay, so it's as simple as that really. Click on the button, goes to next scene. So what we'll do now is we'll add that code to our movie. So if I jump back to actually I won't move that away there, I'll keep that there. If we click on the Untitled 1 tab, I would say the other important thing to do here now is to give this a name. So if we go to File and Save As, and I'm just going to call this one Test because I've already got the same name here. But if you call yours Previous Next Scenes, so a literal name, so you can recognise what that movie does. So Previous Next Scenes, save. Okay, and now we want to add the script. So we want to add the stop action. Now before we do that, we'll create a layer for it. So if we click on the new layer button down here, and we'll name our layers. So if we call layer 1, we'll call it asset, so that's where all the visual assets are. And then layer 2, we'll call that script. So making sure we're on the script layer, we go now to the actions panel. Make sure that the code snippets panel is open here. Click on the expander arrow next to action script here. Now the piece of code we're concerned with are to do with timeline navigation. So if we click on timeline navigation drop down, you'll see this first block of code here, stop at this frame, is the one that we're interested in first of all. Now the great thing is, if we double click on that, it inserts that with the comments explaining what that bit does. Alright, so we know about that. That stops it playing through the animation. The next piece of code, okay, is to do with clicking on the button and going to the next scene. So if we look down here, we've got click to go to next scene and play, so that's the one we want to use. So if we double click on that, now missed a step there. We need to make click on the asset that we want to attach that code to. So make sure you click on the button on the stage, the button symbol, then double click on the code snippet. What it will say is, it will say the selected symbol requires an instance name. Now again, it will give your instances default names. So we'll stick with that rather than giving it our own names, because it's just a straightforward name. So Flash will create an instant name before applying the code sample. So if we OK that, and then it adds the code. So the default name it's given it is button 1 there. So if I just show you here, now if we go back to the stage here, if we click on the button, select the button and go to Properties, you'll see here that's the instance name, that's the name, the unique name given to that button, so the script knows exactly which button we're talking about. Okay, so you see that the script has disappeared. See the script again, just click, and the other thing actually that it's done is it's created, so a little mistake of mine, I created a script layer here. It's actually by default now it creates an actions layer for you, so we can delete our scripts layer. Okay, we go to the actions layer here, you'll see the little A there, that tells us that's where the script is. So if we click on there, we can see our script again. So you see it's exactly the same as the script I showed you before. The only difference is the button name, the default button name it's given it, and the rest of the script is the same. Okay, so now obviously we can't test this yet because when we click on this it's going to send us to the next scene, and we haven't got a next scene yet. Before we do that, we just create a name for this scene. So if you click on the text tool here, click on the scene, and we'll just call that scene 1. Make it clear that that's scene 1. Okay, and then we'll create our second scene. So if you click on the new scene button here in the scene panel, and that creates our new empty scene 2. So basically with scene 2, what we need is we need a next button, but we also need a previous button because we want to be able to go on to the next scene 3 and back to the previous scene 1. So again, dealing first of all with the assets. Okay, our asset, the only asset we need is the button, which is in here. Now we need 2 buttons this time, a previous and a next. So we'll drag those in from the library. Okay, so they're in place. We'll also name it. So if we click on the text tool and just name it scene 2. Okay, we'll name the layer assets. Okay, and basically now the script is pretty much a repetition of what we've just done with one slight difference. So if we start off with what we've already done, to go over that again. So we go to the code snippets panel, we click on stop at this frame. So that means it's not going to play past scene 2 when it gets there. Then we go to the click to go to next scene and play. Now remembering to identify which button we want to attach that to. So that's this one on the right will be the next button. So we make sure we click on that, click to go to next scene and play, double click on that. It'll ask us if we give it a default instance name, which is fine. We can OK that, and you'll see exactly the same again. But obviously it's got to be a unique name, so it's called it button 2 this time rather than button 1, and a unique function name. So it is F1 for function. Click to go to next scene _2. The only difference is the _2 rather than _1 there. So that's a unique function name. Previous function had an _1 after it. Alright, so that's all fine. So the only difference here now is we need a previous button as well. So again, we identify the button on the stage by clicking on the button on the left here. We go to the code snippets panel, and you'll see just above next scene and below next scene and play, we've got previous scene and play. We'll double click on that. Again, OK to add a default name. We'll OK that, and you'll see. So if you just separate those out, that is the third block of script. The previous frame, you'll see the unique button 3 name, the unique function name, which is obviously slightly different to that one. So it's click to go to previous scene. Again, it's a literal name, and when you're naming things, I would think use an obvious literal name. So when you come back to it, you can think, oh yes, straight away, I can remember what that bit does. You'll see the only difference with the code is exactly the same, except for this action at the end here is previous scene rather than next scene. Okay, so it's straightforward. I think covered everything there. So what we'll do is we'll create a scene 3. Okay, so our previous scene has somewhere to go to. Now for the time being, just on this one, we'll just put a stop action on scene 3. So on scene 3, we will double click to add a stop. You see it automatically creates the actions layer, so the stop's on there. And that will stop at scene 3. We'll just name it scene 3 so we can identify it easily. Give it a name on the stage. That should be fine. Alright, so we'll test that now. So if we save, and we go to control and test, fingers crossed, I think we've covered everything. Scene 1 here, we have the button, the next button. Click on that, that takes us to scene 2. We click on previous on scene 2, back to scene 1. Go back to scene 2, click on next on scene 2, and that takes us to scene 3. So that is that basic structure, which is great. So that is the way, to create a basic non-linear animation, or it could be have educational content in there in each scene. could be